This place is home to the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside of Israel, with synagogues, schools, and a seat in parliament. So what is Iran really? A contradiction or a story the world has oversimplified? Do not answer too fast, because the Iran you are about to see is not a slogan or a warning. It is a living place, full of beauty, tension, pride, and contradictions that will rearrange what you thought you knew. Welcome to Iran. To understand why Iran so often stands at the center of global tension, you only need to study a map. Iran is not simply a country. It is a vast natural fortress shaped by mountains and sea. The Alborz Mountains rise in the north, the Zagros stretch across the west, and deep waters guard the south. This geography has shaped a nation known for resilience, one that has proven extraordinarily difficult to conquer, and yet surprisingly vulnerable to isolation. Its location is both advantage and burden. Iran forms the only continuous land bridge connecting Central Asia and the Caucasus to the Indian Ocean and the broader Middle East. At the heart of this strategic position lies the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply moves each day. Even a minor disruption in these waters can rattle global markets and send fuel prices climbing in cities thousands of miles away. Iran did not seek global attention. Its geography made it unavoidable. There is also a distinction Iranians are quick to clarify. They are Persian, not Arab. This difference is rooted in language, history, and identity shaped by imperial memory. More than 2,500 years ago, Cyrus the Great issued what many consider the earliest known charter of human rights. The consciousness of a modern Iranian still carries the weight of that ancient legacy. That enduring pride often collides with contemporary global expectations. For many, preserving civilizational identity feels more important than easing international pressure. Beneath political headlines lies a powerful demographic shift. About 50% of the population is under 30 years old. This generation grew up with technology, navigating digital restrictions with fluency, and using virtual private networks as instinctively as checking the weather. Despite sanctions and internet controls, Iran maintains high levels of social media engagement and strong educational achievement across the region. Step into a fashionable cafe in Tehran, and you might see young women in colorful hijabs holding the latest smartphones, discussing French cinema or recent advances in artificial intelligence. The atmosphere feels ambitious and forward-looking, layered beneath long-standing traditions. Iran is often portrayed as a uniform Islamic state, yet the reality is more complex. The country is home to the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside Israel. Jewish citizens hold a permanent seat in parliament and maintain their own hospitals and synagogues in the capital. Iran is also the birthplace of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic faiths. In Yazd, a sacred fire has burned continuously for more than 1,500 years, enduring invasions, revolutions, and social change. These details reveal a society composed of many layers, where ancient beliefs and contemporary life continue to exist side by side. After decades of sanctions, political isolation, and global scrutiny, it is easy to reduce Iran to headlines. But beyond the debates, beyond the rhetoric, there exists a different rhythm. If you step into the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque just after sunrise, you'll immediately understand why this space remains a sanctuary of color in a country often depicted through a gray, monochromatic lens. The building itself dates from the late 19th century, constructed during the Qajar dynasty, and its greatest strength lies in the carefully calculated way it captures and transforms the morning sunlight. As the light travels across Shiraz, it passes through rows of stained glass windows toward the prayer hall, beginning a slow transformation that fills the interior with amber, ruby, and deep purple tones. These motifs spread across hand-woven carpets and climb the stone columns, creating a mosaic that is always in motion, feeling alive even when the architecture remains completely still. For the people of Shiraz, this display represents the preservation of beauty and vitality that endures despite international pressure or the somber tone of global news. The architects understood precisely how the sun moves at different times of the year, designing a space where the rhythm of the universe dictates the atmosphere of the room. This fleeting moment of brilliance lasts for less than an hour before the sun rises higher and the hall returns to the stillness of its stone slabs, leaving a gentle reminder of the elegance that continues to flourish behind the clamour of public opinion. About an hour's drive from Shiraz, the landscape unfolds into a vast plain where colossal pillars rise from the earth, appearing like ghosts of a once dominant superpower. This is Persepolis, the ceremonial center of the Achaemenid Empire, a site built over 2,500 years ago to display power on a scale that still inspires awe in modern viewers. At its peak, the empire linked dozens of cultures from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean, and Persepolis served as the grand stage where that unification was showcased. As you ascend the grand staircase, designed with wide, shallow steps to allow royal delegations to move with dignity, you'll find detailed reliefs depicting messengers from every corner of the ancient world. These processions lead to what is often called the Gate of All Nations, where envoys from Africa, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Central Asia once gathered beneath towering stone guardians. The memory of that empire is why many Iranians view current global tensions through the lens of millennia of history, maintaining a spirit of resilience forged long before modern borders existed. The site also bears clear marks of its fall. In 330 BCE, Alexander the Great captured Persepolis, and part of the complex was set on fire. Darkened patches still mark sections of stone where the flames once burned, leaving the memory of that conquest etched into the surface of the ruins. In the center of Isfahan, the city unfolds into a vast rectangle that stretches nearly 1,600 feet from end to end, serving as a monument to the ambition of the Safavid dynasty. When Shah Abbas I completed this square in the early 17th century, he created a space where faith, royalty, and commerce were woven into a single, harmonious design. Along the two-story arcades, merchants have traded spices and silks for centuries, and today they continue to maintain the flow of Persian trade even as they navigate the complexities of a modern sanctioned economy. The square is anchored by the Shah Mosque, its towering entrance angled to align with Mecca while maintaining the symmetry of the public space. And the Sheikh Lotfullah Mosque, whose cream-colored dome changes its hue as the afternoon light settles over the city. Inside the Ali Kapu Palace, royal balconies still overlook the field, where polo matches were once played, while beneath the great domes, a single whisper can travel across the tiles and return amplified by the precision of the architecture. As afternoon light settles across the courtyard and families gather on the grass, the square feels both monumental and lived in. Naksh-e-Jahan remains what it was always meant to be, a stage where power, faith, commerce, and daily life meet in careful harmony. Along the banks of the Zayande River in Isfahan, the Sio-Sepol Bridge stands as a stone landmark with 33 arches that have sheltered the social life of the city since the early 17th century. This structure was designed to be much more than a crossing point, functioning instead as a tiered gallery where people could gather to escape the heat and share the news of the day. In the evenings, the bridge remains a vital public space where local musicians and storytellers gather, their voices carrying through the vaulted arches and blending with the sounds of the city. However, the bridge now also stands as a silent witness to the environmental challenges facing the region, as the Zayande River often runs dry due to shifting climates and water management pressures. Instead of watching flowing water, residents now walk across the dry riverbed or gather beneath the arches to sing traditional songs about the river's return, turning the bridge into a site of cultural longing and resilience. The two levels of stone walkways provide a shaded retreat, where the community continues to meet, talk, and maintain their shared traditions despite the changing landscape around them. Siosepol remains an enduring symbol of Isfahan's soul, framing the persistent spirit of a people who find ways to gather and sing even when the waters beneath them have vanished. While the world often looks at the religious architecture of Iran through the lens of political history, there is a place in Shiraz that defies every visual expectation and transports the visitor into a realm of pure light. Shah Cheragh, which means King of Light, is a funerary monument and mosque that serves as the third most important pilgrimage site in the country. From the outside, the building appears as a classic example of Persian design with its tiled domes and towering minarets, but the interior contains a secret that is rarely captured in mainstream media. Every square inch of the walls and the high vaulted ceilings is covered in millions of tiny mirror fragments, meticulously hand-cut and arranged in intricate geometric patterns. The history of the shrine began in the 10th century, when a traveler followed a mysterious light emanating from a distance and discovered a tomb belonging to a sacred figure. Today, that light is amplified by massive emerald green chandeliers that reflect off the mirror work to create an atmosphere that feels like standing inside a massive fractured diamond. This is not merely a display of wealth or vanity, because for the pilgrims who gather here, the mirrors represent the fragmentation of the human ego in the presence of the divine. The sound of quiet prayer and the sight of hundreds of people moving through a sea of green reflections create a sensory experience that is both overwhelming and deeply peaceful. Because the shrine is an active center of faith, it remains one of the most protected and authentic locations in the city, where the ancient tradition of pilgrimage meets a modern search for spiritual sanctuary. It stands as a powerful contradiction to the simple narratives often told about this region, proving that behind the stone walls of Shiraz lies a world of impossible beauty and shimmering light that remains largely unknown to the outside world. Leaving the architectural wonders of the mainland behind and traveling into the sapphire waters of the Persian Gulf brings you to a place that looks less like a destination on Earth and more like a fragment of a distant planet. Hormuz Island is often called the Rainbow Island because of its surreal geology, where the soil displays a spectrum of yellow and purple and white and orange across its volcanic hills. The most striking feature of this landscape is the red beach, where the sand is a deep crimson due to the incredibly high concentration of iron oxide in the earth. When the waves hit the shore, the water itself appears to turn into the color of blood, creating a visual spectacle that is both beautiful and unsettling to those seeing it for the first time. This vibrant red earth is not merely a geological curiosity, because for the people who live on Hormuz, it is a vital part of their culinary heritage. The island is often referred to as a spice island, because this specific red soil is entirely edible and has been used for centuries as a primary ingredient in local cooking. Residents collect the mineral-rich earth to create a traditional sauce known as surak, which they mix with salt and orange peel and local fish to create a pungent and earthy seasoning. They spread this red paste over flatbreads or use it to flavor stews, giving their food a color that matches the very ground they walk on. This practice is perhaps the only place in the world where the landscape and the kitchen are so directly and physically linked. The island remains largely undeveloped, with no large resorts or massive infrastructure, which preserves its raw and prehistoric atmosphere. Walking through the interior of Hormuz feels like wandering through a natural art gallery, where every turn reveals a new mineral formation or a salt cave glistening with crystalline structures. The contrast between the burning heat of the sun and the cooling red waves creates a sensory experience that feels detached from the modern world. Vertical sandstone pillars and jagged arches rise 200 feet above the desert floor on Keshem Island, 2 million years of wind and seasonal rain have carved the sedimentary layers of Stars Valley into a labyrinth of canyons and sharp ridges. The local name, Setare of Tara, translates to the fallen star. This title originates with an account of a celestial object striking the ground with force and thrusting these stone columns into the sky. While geologists explain these formations through the slow process of erosion, the people who have lived on this island for generations tell a much more celestial story. They believe that a star once fell from the heavens and struck the earth with such force that it shattered the ground and sent columns of stone rising toward the sky. As the sun sets and the shadows stretch across the valley, the wind begins to whistle through the holes and crevices in the sandstone pillars. This sound is so eerie and lifelike that many locals refuse to enter the valley after dark, believing that the canyons are inhabited by restless spirits or jinn who guard the silence of the stone. This combination of scientific reality and supernatural folklore gives Stars Valley a weight that goes beyond its physical beauty. It stands as a reminder that in the remote corners of Iran, the landscape is never just a collection of rocks, but a living map of the myths and memories that define the Persian soul. Intersecting vertical fissures and circular hollows pockmark the sandstone walls. These geological features reach heights of 300 feet and form the corridors of Chaku Canyon. Rainwater and wind have carved the sedimentary rock over thousands of years to create a network of 4 distinct intersecting gorges. The cross-hatched patterns on the rock surfaces provide evidence of ancient tectonic movement and gradual erosion. Local residents have utilized the natural drainage of the canyon floor to sustain life on a desert island surrounded by salt water. 4 hand-dug wells sit at the entrance of the gorge and capture every drop of seasonal rain that flows down the smooth stone surfaces. This water remains cool throughout the summer because the narrow passage prevents direct sunlight from reaching the floor for more than 2 hours a day. The engineering of these stone cisterns dates back centuries and relies on the natural slope of the basin to channel water into storage areas. These wells provide the primary source of fresh drinking water for the nearby village of Chahu. Sound carries with clarity through the galleries of rock as the wind moves through the upper ridges. Shadows darken the deep grooves in the sandstone as the sun changes position. Surface temperatures reach 159 degrees Fahrenheit on the salt flats, according to NASA satellite data. This thermal record establishes Dasht Ilut as the site of the highest ground heat ever measured. Massive wind-carved ridges, known as kalerts, rise 200 feet above the desert floor and dominate the western basin. These sedimentary structures extend 80 miles across the horizon and resemble the rigid geometry of an abandoned metropolis. Constant wind erosion continues to reshape the silt and clay into aerodynamic fins and deep troughs that align with the prevailing seasonal gales. The landscape contains vast areas of black basalt, where heat absorption creates an environment nearly void of microbial life. The Persian onager inhabits the fringes of these salt plains and manages survival in an area with minimal vegetation. This wild ass reaches speeds of 43 miles per hour to navigate the significant distances between sparse water sources. High-speed endurance and light-colored coats allow these animals to withstand the extreme solar radiation. Observations confirm that the onager relies on salt-tolerant shrubs and seasonal moisture trapped beneath the hard crust of the basalt fields. The heavy silence of the plains is broken only by the movement of sand grains against the sun-bleached stones. Manual labor has shaped a network of underground tunnels that moves water through the center of the country, where the sun remains constant for 300 days a year. Ancient city of Yazd sun-dried mud bricks form a dense network of narrow alleys and interconnected courtyards. This urban structure has maintained continuous human habitation for several thousand years. The thick clay walls provide thermal mass that absorbs solar radiation during the day and slowly releases it after sunset. Elevated rectangular towers rise above the flat rooftops of Yazd and function as a sophisticated passive cooling system known as badgirs. These structures capture high-altitude breezes through vertical vents and channel the air downward into the living quarters. External pressure differences pull warm air upward while circulating cooler air through the interior rooms and subterranean water storage areas. The precise operation of wind catchers reduces indoor temperatures by 18 degrees Fahrenheit without the use of mechanical power or electricity. This architectural design ensures livability in an environment where summer temperatures frequently exceed 100 degrees. Narrow skylights in the vaulted ceilings provide minimal illumination to prevent excessive heat gain within the narrow passages. Residents navigate a landscape of mud brick domes and clay arches that maintain structural integrity across centuries of seismic activity. The survival of Yazd depends on the strategic management of airflow and the thermal properties of raw earth. The city layout minimizes the surface area exposed to direct sunlight while maximizing shade for pedestrians in the thoroughfares. Underground channels, known as kanats, transport water originating in distant mountains to reservoirs beneath the houses to facilitate evaporative cooling. The interplay of earthen materials and vertical shafts maintains a stable climate within the private courtyards. The clay surfaces receive a coating of mud and straw to protect the underlying bricks against erosion and cracking. Every street and archway follows a logic of climate mitigation developed through millennia of observation. Twin circular masonry cylinders occupy the summits of barren ridges at the desert fringe. These structures, known as the Towers of Silence or Dakhmas, provide a site for the Zoroastrian practice of excarnation. The masonry walls reach 30 feet in height and enclose a roofless interior paved with flat stones. Adherents of this faith consider fire and soil as sacred elements that remain pure. Traditional sky burials involve placing the deceased atop the tower summit for consumption by vultures. This method avoids the pollution of the ground during decomposition and avoids the violation of fire during cremation. The interior floor consists of 3 concentric rings divided by stone curbs. Bearers placed men in the outermost circle, women in the middle, and children in the smallest central ring. Arid winds and constant solar radiation sterilize the remains following the removal of soft tissue by scavengers. A central ossuary pit measuring 10 feet deep receives the bleached bones once the process concludes. Layers of lime, charcoal, and sand inside the pit accelerate the disintegration of the skeletal remains. This filtration system ensures that rainwater, passing through the pit, enters the subterranean layers, avoiding biological pollutants. Stone steps carved into the hillside connect the towers to the ritual buildings below. High masonry walls prevent external observation of the interior, while providing a physical barrier between the living and the deceased. The structures stand as massive grey landmarks against the horizontal lines of the desert basin. Silence dominates the limestone galleries, where the wind moves through the open top. Large sheets of European glass broke into thousands of fragments during the 19th century transit across the mountains. Artisans gathered the shards and pressed the jagged pieces into wet plaster to create the decorative art known as aynekari. This technique covers the walls and ceilings of the Golestan Palace. Millions of hand-cut slivers sit at varying angles to catch the light of emerald chandeliers. The Hall of Mirrors consists of geometric configurations that turn the interior into a continuous mosaic. Construction of the palace complex began in the 16th century, with significant expansion occurring in the 1800s. The marble throne veranda consists of 65 pieces of yellow marble originating in the province of Yazd. Outside the royal chambers stands the Shams Olimare, which rises 5 stories above the courtyard. It incorporates an iron clock tower and traditional Persian brickwork. Sunlight passes through stained glass and produces a spectrum of color across the marble floors. Beyond the palace walls, 13 million people inhabit the surrounding metropolitan area. Constant motor traffic moves through the avenues of the capital. A white marble arch rises 148 feet above a grassy oval in the western part of the city. 25,000 blocks of white marble originating in the province of Isfahan define the exterior of a structure that reaches 148 feet in height. This arch, known as the Azadi Tower, stands at the western entrance of the capital within a 15-acre circular plaza. The geometry of the vaulting combines the parabolic curves of Sassanid architecture with the pointed arches of the Islamic era. Master stonemasons cut the marble with precision to ensure that the joints between the slabs remain tight and seamless. The building commemorates the 2,500th year of the Persian monarchy and serves as the physical intersection of traditional history and modern urban development. Underground levels house a museum containing artifacts of the ancient era and a library dedicated to the cultural history of the region. The interior walls feature turquoise tiles and gold leaf accents that contrast with the white exterior. Heavy granite pavers cover the surrounding grounds, where the noise of heavy motor traffic remains constant. Political shifts and public demonstrations frequently occupy the plaza at the base of the white stone. The tower serves as a primary navigation point for the 13 million residents of the metropolitan area. National events use the granite walls as a surface for large-scale light projections that illuminate the night sky. The interplay of white marble and the heavy urban smog creates a high-contrast visual for the surrounding landscape. Moisture from the Caspian Sea traps a constant layer of fog within the dense forests of the Gilan province. 1,000 stone steps ascend through the ancient canopy to reach a military fortress located 2,300 feet above sea level. This structure, known as Rukkan Castle, consists of brick and stone walls stretching 1,500 yards along the jagged ridges of the Alborz. 42 circular watchtowers remain positioned at strategic intervals to overlook the narrow valley below. Construction began during the Sassanid era and underwent expansion in the 11th century to protect the northern region from external conquest. The heavy moisture of the temperate rainforest encourages the growth of thick moss across the masonry and brickwork. Large timber beams support the internal chambers, where soldiers once monitored the mountain passes. The high walls and steep terrain ensured the fortress was never breached throughout its history. Seasonal rains maintain the flow of small streams that move past the base of the fortifications. Sunlight rarely reaches the forest floor through the overlapping branches of beech and elm trees. The surrounding terrain serves as a habitat for the Persian leopard, a predator that utilizes the heavy cover to move undetected through the northern districts. Silence persists within the stone corridors as the fog moves across the battlements. Sedimentary volcanic cones, reaching heights of 60 feet, define the landscape of the East Azerbaijan province. 700 years of manual labor have hollowed out these rock formations to create functional living spaces within the mountain of Sahan. This settlement, known as Kandavan, remains inhabited by several hundred residents who utilize the volcanic stone as a natural thermal regulator. The porous material provides insulation that maintains a stable internal temperature of 70 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the external winter snow or summer heat. The interior of each cone often contains multiple floors connected by external stone staircases carved directly into the rock face. Households utilize the ground level for livestock and the upper levels for kitchens and sleeping quarters. Narrow windows cut into the thick walls provide minimal light while preventing heat loss during the sub-zero temperatures of the northwestern winters. This architectural method relies on the structural integrity of the volcanic ash to support the weight of the entire community without the use of timber or mortar. A concrete highway measuring 9 miles in length bisects a shallow basin of pale green and yellowish water. White salt crusts reach a thickness of several feet across the exposed lake bed. This body of water, known as Lake Urmia, once covered over 2,000 square miles between the cities of Tabriz and Urmia. Environmental shifts and the construction of dams caused the water volume to drop by 80% over the last several decades. Shallow pools of emerald and sulfurous yellow now occupy only a small fraction of the original basin. The Shahid Kalantari Bridge creates a straight asphalt path through the mineral flats. Motor vehicles move across the highway, where crystalline salt extends to the horizon on both sides. Individuals walk across the hard white surfaces where water previously reached depths of 30 feet. Abandoned docks and rusted piers stand on dry ground miles distant to the current shoreline. High salt concentrations prevent the survival of most aquatic life within the remaining pools. Mud brick settlements with flat roofs and silver-domed mosques occupy the arid plains surrounding the basin. These villages rely on underground water sources as the lake becomes increasingly saline. Dust storms originating on the dry plains carry salt particles into the nearby agricultural districts and settle on the earthen walls of the houses. The white mineral deposits catch the light of the midday sun and create a high contrast landscape against the barren mountain ridges. Local efforts to redirect river water attempt to stabilize the remaining levels. The white surface of the lake bed remains motionless in the absence of wind. Mineral deposits line the edges of the water, where the birds move in the silence. The heavy salt concentration provides a visual record of the environmental shifts in the northwestern plateau as the asphalt road meets the dry shoreline. Five and a half miles of interconnected brick vaults and vaulted corridors define the largest covered market in the world. This structure, known as the Tabriz Historic Bazaar, sits at the center of the northwestern plateau and has functioned as a primary commercial hub since the height of the Silk Road trade. The architecture consists of high masonry domes that maintain a stable internal temperature against the extreme winter snows and summer heat of the East Azerbaijan province. Master masons constructed the brick arches and skylights several centuries ago to allow natural light and ventilation to reach the thousands of stalls and caravanserais within the complex. Specific sections, or rastas, specialize in the trade of hand-woven Persian carpets and copperware and imported spices. The heavy scent of cumin and saffron fills the vaulted galleries, where merchants continue to utilize traditional weighing scales and handwritten ledgers. Narrow passages connect the commercial areas to traditional tea houses and mosques, where the hum of trade is constant throughout the day. The brickwork remains as evidence of the historical intersection between Turkish and Persian and Caucasian cultures. Heavy timber doors secure the entrances to the individual shops at the end of the business hours. Sanctions and regional friction dominate the headlines. Beyond the rhetoric, 50% of the population is under 30 and navigates the space between ancient stone and digital connectivity. 71 degrees Celsius. That is colder than the surface of Mars. In this remote corner of northeastern Russia, the cold does more than challenge life. It defines it. Here, people use refrigerators to keep their food warm. Drivers leave their engines running 24/7 for 8 months straight, because if a car stops, it turns into a useless block of scrap metal. Even the bodies buried in the earth refuse to decompose. This is not a survival movie. This is simply daily life in Yakutia. Welcome to Yakutia. Imagine a territory vast enough to swallow India whole, yet inhabited by fewer than 1 million souls. This is the Republic of Sakha. At its center stands Yakutsk, the coldest major city on Earth and an engineering anomaly. Every building hovers on concrete stilts. If they sat directly on the soil, the heat would melt the permafrost and the earth would swallow the city whole. Markets here operate without power. Fish are stacked like firewood, frozen solid in midair. Milk is sold as bricks of white ice. But the city is just the gateway. Beyond lies a river frozen into a highway and stone pillars holding fossils of a tropical past. Beneath this white silence lies a staggering fortune, 25% of the world's diamonds, locked inside a vault of ice. Further out, a road built on human bones stretches into the void. Thawing mud reveals mammoths with liquid blood, and ancient viruses are waking up from a 30,000-year sleep. The true frozen heart lies ahead. The journey begins on the Yana Oymyakon Plateau. Here, the geography acts as a trap. The mountains form a bowl that catches heavy, freezing air sinking from the atmosphere. This geological funnel creates a phenomenon found nowhere else in the northern hemisphere. It is the pole of cold. The first marker on this descent into the deep freeze is Tomtor, a small, solitary village that sits on the erratic road, leading into the interior. In summer, the valley is lush, but when winter settles, Tomtor becomes a gateway to an alien world. The silence here is heavy. The only movement comes from the smoke rising vertically from chimneys, standing like white pillars against a dark purple sky. It is a prelude to the ultimate extreme, located just 30 kilometers away. 2. Oymyakon, Oymyakon. This isolated settlement of 500 people holds the record for the lowest temperature ever recorded in a permanently inhabited place. The monument in the town center commemorates a reading of -71.2 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, the atmosphere itself changes. In Oymyakon, the cold alters the very physics of breathing. Exhaled moisture does not merely condense, it instantly shatters into crystals mid-air. As the ice particles collide in mid-air, they create a faint, rustling noise. The locals call it the whisper of stars. It is the audible signature